This is T and Transformed Relationships, and I'm Angela. And transformed relationships is a powerful transformation of what love can be. And each Wednesday I do a Facebook Live. You can bring your love Q&A, and I have a topic each Wednesday that I pull out of my hat or somewhere else. When I'm reviewing either some of the comments from previous transformed relationships, I've actually started a list because there's a lot of ideas that are coming. And also in regard to what is I'm picking up from the social media and news. And the whole mission of transformed relationships is to create what love can be, because a lot of people have certain perceptions of what love is, what it's not, how relationships may not be what we would hope they could be. And as I've said in other T and transformed relationships, we're looking at a different way of looking at romance, or a different way of moving on from romance to maybe a much more empowered love, or a love that's more inclusive, more practical about the difficulties of relationships. And one of the things that I like to invoke about love is that it's actually a lot more magical than our world is allowing us to experience right now. So the topic for today touches on that, because it's about what is our nature. How do we perceive ourselves, and how much of how we as a culture perceives ourselves perhaps limits love or makes love less magical. And also that would mean how we perceive ourselves as our body, our feelings, and our hearts. So I've got a book link there. It's a book I've written called The Body of Love. And I was so passionate to write the book, The Body of Love, because I could see from my working with mainly women, but I also worked with men in dance and healing, I could see how easy it is for us not to love our bodies. It's kind of second nature, even my language, second nature, to not love your body. It's kind of like, who goes around thinking, oh, wow, I really love and enjoy my body? It's just not on. It's not part of how we express or experience ourselves or share ourselves. And the body of love for me was almost an honoring of the body, because through honoring my body, through dance, healing, and experience, touch that was a healing touch, a nurturing touch, I actually found this incredible love for the body, and I wanted to share what that was like. So what did I start with? First, I had to start with, what is the body? What is our nature? How is the body designed? Not from a bird's eye point of view, but from internally. Because honestly, science can study us externally, but our experience, our perception of our body will always be internal. And touch may be one of the senses that forces you to go more internal than any other sense. Why is that so? When we're prenatal, when we're in our mother's belly, we experience almost everything through touch. We're not formed fully yet. Our senses aren't developed yet, but touch is one of the most developed senses, sound as well. And we begin to experience everything through that. It's very pre-language, pre-cognition, pre-everything really when you're in utero. And so touch becomes the first language really of identifying the world and self. And in fact, in utero, there is no separation of self and the world. You're just a blob that's experiencing everything through kinesthetic experiences. So taking that into post-birth, we get to have a really interesting dance with touch for the rest of our lives, because it takes us back to that pre-birth moment. So our nature, our perception of our nature, is very strongly metered or received through the senses, even before birth, and most certainly as we grow and develop the nervous system. And in the Body of Love book, I talk about a kind of, I won't say bastardize science in it, but I kind of take science and make it really mundane, only because I know that touch is such a touchy subject, and that when I worked with healing and touch, people went to really deep places very fast and had no language for it. Obviously, because when you use touch, you're getting into pre-language experience. And, even prenatal experience you can access through touch. So it's a touchy subject because there's a lot of shame that could be wrapped up in there. But shame wasn't the only thing I discovered. There were many other perceptions of the self that were brought up. So I kind of bastardized it in the book, and I simplify it to say what feels good system. The nervous system has basically got two pieces. Something feels good and something doesn't feel good. So I call it the what feels good system and what does not feel good system. So actually I call it the what feels good system. And in the nervous system of your body, 24 hours a day, even when we're sleeping, through dream state and through just resting, you are discovering what feels good all the time, and you're storing that in your library, in your emotional brain, all of your life. So this experience of the world, how we perceive the world, is always part of our nature. We're born that way. We don't come in with that fully developed. And the latter part of my topic is saying, in love, do we learn about love? Are we built to love through our nature, through our bodies, the way they're designed, or nurture? And of course, I think most of us would agree it's a bit of both. Some of you may say there's more influence from nurture, but really they're two interweaving factors. Our systems are designed in our nervous system to pick up what doesn't feel good and what feels good. And we have an emotional brain, ancient brain, that stores that in our limbic brain, unconscious brain as well. It's stored in the body through the nervous system memory. So like when the baby touches a fire, it remembers it's hot, or it remembers its parents screaming to not touch the fire, so it doesn't. And that gets stored. Also through nature, we are nurtured because as a tribal animal, we're raised through nurture. Of course, everybody knows humans that have less nurture than others, and the lack of nurturing or being raised in a war zone, that can create a very different version of what's safe and what's not safe, or what's good and what's not good. But within our very nature, we have a perception system, a nervous system constantly giving us feedback and storing information. So when it comes to love, are we built in our nature to love? We're not exactly built to love internally. We're built by the nature of ourselves living in a community. And that's why community is becoming much more important these days. Even though we might be, from the news, hearing things that are bad in the community, a lot of people are looking for community. A lot of Facebook is about that desire. We are looking for community. We are looking to be tribal animals. And as much as it's mediated by technology, it's still that base need that we have in our nature to be nurtured in a group, to be raised by family or a tribe, and to receive affection in order to get sustenance, in order to get food, shelter, warmth, in order to just know how to survive. We are tribal animals by our nature. So there's no puzzle to my question here, do we learn love by nature or nurture? It's a combination of both, because within our nature, as human beings, as an animal, as well as a human animal, we are pack animals or tribal animals, not pack, but tribal, if you want to get into the words. So we need nurture in order to survive. And that nurture, of course, can come in many forms. It doesn't have to be telling someone how fantastic they are. It can be providing food. It can be providing warmth. It can be singing a song to make you feel soothed. It can come in so many small ways that also by nature, human beings understand, just like other Homo sapiens, that soothing and affection is a daily occurrence. It's not something that you do on the weekends when you feel like it, even though that's how dating, modern dating sometimes can become. You know, oh, I'm feeling a bit lonely, maybe I should go on a date. That could be what modern dating's become, but nature-wise, as a tribal animal, we need that nurturance every day. And there is quite a lot of research about how the brain develops from touch, from nurturing touch. And children raised without that, their actual language system doesn't develop. So nurturing, soothing, that's all a part of the human nature as a tribal animal. If individually you're isolated, some interesting things start to happen. When a child gets isolated, by nature, they will cry or seek affection. They will seek nourishment. They will seek cry. They will send out a cry for that. So by nature, we're also designed to complain, you could say. But it's not only just a complaint signal, it's a signal that something's not right. So it goes back to that system that we have, what's good and what's not good. And we're wired that way. We're destined to keep on seeking for what we need. And this is something that I think we perhaps don't take advantage of in the modern day of love, modern relationships, the challenges. Often what happens is because we've been raised to be self-sufficient or ashamed of expressing when we don't understand something, vulnerability, or that I don't know, or that you want affection, we've been raised that that's not really an admirable thing to express. We've been raised not to vocalise our needs, especially if you've been crying as a kid and those responses were dismissed or perhaps ignored or looked down upon. That could also be another trigger. But I think culturally as well, once you're an adult, there's this expectation that you should be self-sufficient or you're more in control and capable when you are. When our nature really is to cry like a baby when we need something. That's our nature. We're born that way. So just because you become an adult, it really doesn't change. The sounds might change. But often when I'm having a relationship problem with my partner, I hear him going, wah, underneath the moving lips. That's what I hear. I don't mean to make fun of him like that, but it's pretty much what goes on in my brain. I'm hearing the words when he's having a problem, but underneath it, I'm hearing the baby going, wah, wah, that they have a problem and it's not being addressed. It's not being paid attention to, because that's how we're designed as well. Our nervous system says something is wrong. I'm not having my needs met now. Wah. That's how we work. And sometimes the wah is a running away signal. So traditionally, if you were facing the tigers or the lions, you would run. But if you're a child, you need someone to carry you. So we're also very from birth raised and nurtured to be carried, to be supported when we can't do things ourselves. So our nature is, it's really quite interesting if you break it down. In the book, The Body of Love, I look at it more from where have you come into certain beliefs about how you should be and how to start shifting those particular beliefs, because those perceptions of how you should be, I shouldn't cry, I shouldn't ask for help, I shouldn't admit that I don't know something. Those things are very debilitating in terms of you being a functional part of your tribe, your family, your love relationship, or your friends and your community. And it's also debilitating if you're dating and looking for someone, because in a lot of ways you're not able to get past certain levels of intimacy problems. So, for example, with my partner, even though when he's talking and I hear he's got a need and he's hurt, I don't run away. I can say, oh gosh, he's in trouble here, what can I do? Of course, my go-to response could also be that I'm really angry because he's having a need not being met, and I feel that I'm being blamed for something. So I could have more than one response going on at the same time because of all those conditioned responses, perception of what it is in our society if someone needs help or needs nurturance. So our nature is very much conditioned by our society, belonging to a tribe, and also our self-perceptions of how we fit into that tribe or don't fit into that tribe. So if you've been raised from a baby where you've got nurturance when you cried, then perhaps you maybe have better skills at asking for things. If you were ignored as a child, then perhaps you got used to being ignored. And if you were criticised as a child, then perhaps you got used to being criticised. So sometimes that happens to me if my partner starts to complain or say that he's been hurt or whinges, as we say in Australia. That's another patronising way to say someone has a need. We call it a whinge. We patronise it and put it down socially. Sometimes because I did grow up with criticism and I took it to heart as a kid, when my partner's having a need and expressing it, that he wants help, I can take it as a criticism because that's the filter that I was nurtured in or raised in. So our nature is very complicated by those perceptions of how we see ourselves, how we see our bodies, how we see our feelings, and then finally I put how we see our hearts, because we very rarely see our hearts because we're so busy looking at our feelings, what's in my bodies, how am I being rejected or perceived by this person. And we spend a lot of energy, quite a bit of energy, I would say most of our relationships, from the moment you start dating to getting more serious and committing, and then as you go through the first stages of a committed relationship, most of that relationship is based on your perception of self. Is this person really perceiving me? Are they judging me? Are they accepting me? Are they rejecting a part of me? And even if you get to the commitment phase, this still continues. We spend most of our energy worried or thinking about how is this person perceiving me, and we spend a bit less time on the heart, because the heart part is actually underneath all of those perceptions and it's operating the whole time, but it's a lot more simple, it's a lot more quiet. So if you think about our nature, the nervous system is running 24/7, even when we're sleeping. It's operating your body, your breathing, everything. It's regulating, it's measuring the temperature of the air outside, it's warming you up, it's keeping the lungs going, the blood, everything going. And then when you're awake, it's perceiving how you're fitting into your tribe. If you're in a relationship, it's perceiving your signals from your partner. If you have kids, it's perceiving what's going on with them and their needs. And if you have a community or a family, extended family, it's perceiving all of their stuff as well. So there's a lot going on from the moment that you're born. And our perception of our bodies is really, in some ways, limited. Transformed relationships is about breaking free of some of those perceptions of your body that you have taken on. I learnt a lot about that through dance and healing, because I didn't understand that my body was actually something that could be free. I was very much raised where my body had to be a certain shape, certain size, wasn't allowed to have body hair, wasn't really attractive if I had dark features, dark hair, hairy legs. That was not cool at all when I grew up. Not cool at all. Still not cool because I have to remove it, but growing up feeling like a hairy person was really difficult. So I grew up with a lot of perceptions that my tribe, where I grew up in Australia, didn't really like me from my physical appearance. I ain't the only person that grew up that way. I bet 1,000 people grew up that way. What was one of the first moments, I was 26 years old, where that shifted for me was when I travelled outside of Australia for one of the first times, it wasn't the first, but one of the first times I went to Bali in Indonesia. And I have quite extensive hair. And a Balinesian man came up to me and touched it and said, nice. And I was like, what? And I had no perception of his perception of that body hair. I could not perceive a man or a human being. The gender didn't matter at the time. I mean, of course, I was a little bit sort of, don't hit on me. But I couldn't understand his perception because I was so in my perception of what body hair was, and it wasn't attractive when I grew up, that I couldn't perceive another person would see that. And we grow up with our bodies being perceived by the tribe that we grow up in. So perhaps you may have a story like that. You grew up where your body was perceived a certain way, and you go to a completely different country or neighbourhood even, and you suddenly you fit in with the tribe. I've heard so many stories of people who've gone to different neighbourhoods or countries and they start to breathe and relax. Why? Because the people look like them, or the people don't look at you anymore as if you're a strange person or what are you doing here? So if you think about that alone, the way that we look physically and the responses from your tribe, that actually conditions, that's part of your nurturance. So our nature is to receive those signals from our environment all the time. And if you grow up with all those signals coming at you, the perception becomes really strong that there might be something unattractive or unacceptable about your appearance. I saw a great interview with Trevor Noah the other day about how he grew up in South Africa, but he was a mixed race. So he was African and Swedish, I think his dad is. So he was considered privileged in the black community because his colour was lighter. And he talks about it, how he didn't see it as privileged, but he enjoyed the benefits of it because his grandma couldn't beat him because he had lighter skin colour. And she could beat the other grandkids, but he wasn't beaten. But he had no perception of that because he was a kid. He just thought it was because he was Trevor and he was lucky and he was the bee's knees. But he also enjoyed that he got away with that benefit as well. So one thing to see if you're looking at love and a love relationship is your perception of yourself will be challenged at some point. It may be challenged to a level where you think it's very uncomfortable, I don't like this. For me, when I got challenged about my attractiveness in my personal relationships, it was perhaps one of the most frightening experiences in intimacy that I had, because there's nothing more awkward than trying to be, without clothes on and intimate with someone and thinking that you're unattractive. It's just horrible. Yet what I began to discover as I was healing, I'm going to read Sylvia's comments soon, I'll just finish. When I discovered through healing that other women and men had this desperate feeling of feeling unattractive, I started to see I wasn't the only one. So Sylvia's shared a comment. It has come to my awareness how I really don't know how good I am. And that's what I experienced when I went to Bali in that moment when the man touched my hair. I had no concept that I could be attractive with hair on my arm. I had no concept. So Sylvia continues, I've only focused on the bad. I'm learning to accept my bad appearance, she's putting bad in inverted commas, and how relative it is for each person. I understand where you're coming from. Ultimately, I have to please myself because I can't please each and every person with their personal preference on beauty, love, and etc. Right? So thank you so much for sharing that, Sylvia. So And what Sylvia shared about, ultimately, I have to please myself because I can't please each and every person. Can you imagine that traditionally humans grew up in tribes of maybe, 50 to 150 people, maybe 300 max. And you, in your life, as a tribal human, you had to please or fit in or get along with 100 to 200 people max. Come, the modern era, now we've got Facebook and every social media app on the planet that you can. There's 4 billion people, and somehow we're all trying to fit into some concept of beauty or concept of perfect. It's so crazy that it no longer exists. And that's actually the benefit of the internet now. For me, I had to get on a plane at 26, after 26 years of feeling unattractive. And for a foreign country to show me the experience where potentially something that I thought was ugly could be attractive. And that now you can go on the internet and have the same experience. You can talk to other people. You can see beauty in other countries that you might not be able to see in your own neighborhood. You can look at someone and go, gosh, that's really amazing how they are. I don't know what that's like, but you can begin to experience it. So this thing that Sylvia shared about pleasing each and every person, I think now with the internet is potentially being exploded, because we can't be dominated by marketing that says there's one type of beauty. We're starting to see in the promotion of beauty globally now, in the fashion industry, the very emaciated body figures are being challenged. I think in France they've barred certain body sizes that are too emaciated from actually being on the catwalk. And we're seeing different models being employed that have skin discolorations and other features that may be so-called challenging to look at or not considered typically beautiful. And we're seeing a discussion about it, that beauty is not just in the eye of the beholder, but it's also culturally what we give permission to be seen or to be talked about as beauty and to be shared as beauty. So culturally, we have a long way to go, because we still are very judgmental about people from their features, but we are seeing it shifting. And I think what Sylvia's sharing about, I can't please everyone, I have to please myself, that becomes then a huge journey. If you start to look at, well, my perception of my body is off, I've been basing it on others' opinions. If I base it on pleasing myself, what could that be? I'm interested in people sharing comments if they have tips about how to start pleasing yourself and experience yourself, because I think from my journey, it was much more like a personal love story about falling in love with what made me happy, not with how gorgeous I was, but with what made me happy. And sometimes it was getting dressed up. Sometimes it was putting on music and doing stupid dancing with my friends. I still do that, actually. And funny faces. Sometimes it's doing things that are fun that makes me fall in love with myself because I have a good time doing it. But that journey of pleasing yourself sometimes may be one of the most liberating things we have about modern society. If we look back at where humans came from as a tribal creature, our nature was to fit into the tribe. We may not please everybody, but if we lived in a tribe of 100 to 200 people, we had to get along in order for us to thrive. And maybe you had a personality clash, but you kind of lived with it. And maybe you sort of worked around your differences even if you didn't like each other. But now, because we've exploded that old model of living in smaller groups, we've got a lot more freedom, and that sometimes freedom can feel a bit too much. It feels like, oh gosh, where do I start to love myself? And I always start with what makes me feel good, what makes me have fun, and it's not just eating chocolate, because I do love that. And sometimes I drink wine because I like to have a bit of wine, but if I had wine every day, I don't think I'd like it. So I look at a whole range of activities that I really enjoy doing with my body. And obviously some of that will be with other people as well, if you know what I mean. Not just the hanky-panky stuff, but it's having fun is a big value for me. So that's where I've learned to enjoy my body. Thank you, David. So if people are thinking about perception of self and understanding the self, how do we love ourselves? Is it based on how you perceive yourself? And if you're in a box of how you perceive yourself, one of the things I wanted to give you faith and hope for is that that will grow over your life. When I was young, I was quite fat, and I didn't understand what body shape or size I was. I still don't. I actually don't know how big or small I am. And I still actually experience when I put on weight, I think I'm smaller than I am. It's a form of body dysmorphia. It's not a serious form of body dysmorphia, but I swear I put on clothes and I think they should fit and they don't. And then I go, oh, I've put on weight. And I actually don't understand where my body begins and ends, because I grew up being a really chubby kid and I didn't have a really good sense of my size. And the other thing that, yes, I am married, David. The other thing that I've discovered is that my perception of my body constantly changes. So while I might have had one perception when I was young, and that was largely formed by feeling unattractive, I didn't know where I belonged in my family, so that made me feel very unattractive too, or where do I fit in? So I felt a bit lost. And that just feeling like you don't know where you belong will make you feel unattractive, because remember, in our nature, we're meant to live in small tribes. And in a small tribe, you know what you do. You know you have to collect the berries, or you make the pretty flowers for the dance party, or whatever traditions that you have. In a larger society, if you don't know your role, and in a family, if you don't know your role as a child, it's very confusing. And it means sometimes you actually don't know how to value yourself or what your value is. And that can be very difficult then to have a sense of love, because if you know what your value is or what you contribute to the family, you can be really proud, or you can have fun because somebody said you did a good job. So these what Sylvia's sharing too about not being, not focusing on how good you are, that can often come from your family environment or your tribal or community environment where you weren't clear about what role you played in the family. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to clarify it. So your body, what I discovered, it's never the same. Your perception of it is constantly changing. Your body is always changing, but our perception of it changes as well based on what we think about our value and our role in the tribe and in your family or in your community. So one of the things that Sylvia's brought up is not focusing on how good you are. One of the troubles of not focusing on how good you are comes from not knowing your value or your role or how valuable you are to others. And by David. And so you can focus, if you want to change your perception and focus on how good you are, start to see where you give value. If you need to ask friends and family where you give value, then do it. I mean, it might feel a bit weird, like, oh, how do I, go up to someone and say, I know you're my friend and I know I like you. Can you tell me what value I bring to your life? I use an excuse, like I have a homework assignment for my school project, or I'm working with a coach and she made me do this exercise. It's important to get feedback from others on your value that you bring. Because like my body size, I didn't have a clear sense of what my body size is. I still don't today, and I don't think I ever will. It keeps changing anyway, so I can't keep track. So maybe it's more interesting to actually, I use an external factor, my clothes. My clothes that I know fit me some months ago, if they don't fit now, I know that my size is bigger. So that's an external clue as to what my body size is. So for your value, your personal value, to others, it's really great to ask them what value you give them, because then you can get a sense of how others receive you, especially if you didn't get it when you grew up. And so I wanted to close with our hearts, because often we get stuck on the body, we get stuck on the feelings and our perception of ourselves through our body and our feelings. And the heart is very quiet. It's always there. It's always operating. In fact, the heart still pumps sometimes, even when it's not being fully oxygenated. It's got a life force sometimes that medicine doesn't quite understand how it operates itself even, and automatically operates. So remember that your heart, even though you are raised with a nervous system that's constantly telling you what's good, what's bad, or what's safe, what's not safe, and you might have feelings that you're not clear about the value or how good you are, or like me, you don't know your body size, so you have to try your clothes on to see how big or small you've got. Maybe one of the ways that's actually much more grounding is feeling your heart, is connecting to your heart. And a lot of what I do that actually changed the way I loved myself and created my relationship that I have now is stopping focusing on my feelings as if they were a definition of who I was. Because I started to see over my life, my body changed, my perception of my body changed from day to day. My feelings changed all the time, probably more than my body and my perception. So what was constant? What was constant was your heart. I also, in the Body of Love book, call it your inner GPS. And it's that thing that seems to know just the thing that you need in the moment. It's that thing that takes you to the book and you open the page at the right page that you need to read, or you go to the YouTube video exactly that you need to hear to get through to that higher self, or that true, deeper, authentic self, that deeper part of you. So your heart is always there just waiting for you to tap into it. And that's where I noticed we don't spend enough time doing that, because we get so caught up in the perception of how we fit into our tribe. So if you have any questions about that, I do share a lot of the exercises in the book about how to tap in. So Sylvia's got another comment. What did you discover with the value with yourself, for an example? I need clarity with the value thing. Does it have to do with following our one heart, or is it a mental thing? Great question. So with your heart, you will get a sense of your value that goes beyond how you are in the human world. So if we think of the human world, the 3D world, it operates very much as a horizontal plane. It goes vertical as well. It's actually like a kinesphere. So your value is based on all the perceptions that you're picking up from others about what you give to them that's of value. So from their feedback, or from their, organically, you might feel someone feels happy around you. So if someone smiles, or they like to be around you, you can feel organically that there's something there that they're valuing, otherwise they wouldn't be around. With that is our nervous system, and that will be your mental body starting to measure and write down, well, this person likes to hang around me. So that's evidence. Mental body will look for evidence. They like this about me. And the exercise I gave before, where you ask your friends and family that you trust, what value do I bring you, or how do I improve your life? What do I make you feel good about? That's a mental body exercise. That's going to give you evidence that will prove that you do give value. The heart is, and it is a heart and a mental thing. The heart will actually not be so worried about how others perceive you, because the heart's not concerned about how big or fat or skinny or hairy or ugly or pretty you are. The heart actually wants you to fulfill your life purpose and your dreams, your desires. So the heart's going to keep on bringing you back to that peace. It's not so concerned with how your heart is received in the world. It will be watching that, but it's not going to really determine your value in the world because it already knows that you're valuable. So the reason I say we need to spend more time with our heart is because it won't have any doubt. It won't tell you that there's anything wrong with you. It will actually keep on trying to make you grow and expand, and your mind and your emotions will come and go, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. It didn't work when I did that time, and that person hates me, and that person said this about me. But the heart is your anchor that really your value is so enormous that it can't be measured. So what I'm talking about with your value in human relationships, you do need to actually start to look at, this is a mental body exercise. How do you improve people's lives? And write it down. Make a list. How do you touch people's hearts? How do you make people feel? These are mental body exercises because they're forcing you to look like a scientist into your environment and see how people get uplifted by your energy. And it's a natural way, instead of being, hey, I'm the best and look how everybody loves me, it's a natural way of actually acknowledging, yeah, people really do love me. They enjoy this about me. They laugh at my jokes. They want to come out shopping with me. They want to do this with me. They want to come to my house and spend time with me. These are the things, people pursue you to do stuff. That's a really big clue, and the mental body, the mind, will need to make clues about your value to get it much more tangible in the world. Pretty much like I had to put my pants on and realised I put on weight because I thought I was losing weight, and that was my inner heart. My heart was telling me, Angela, you're wonderful the way you are. Just go out and enjoy yourself. But my physical body's like, nah, you put on weight, sweetheart, and you're still okay. But my physical body was telling me the reality when I put the pants on. So, and my mental body had to adjust, and my mental body had to start going, why did that happen? Blah, 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 blah. But the mental body does build your value by making, looking and making, acknowledging and evidence. And by the way, Sylvia and everyone, we unconsciously every day, we are making judgments, positive and negative judgments, about how people perceive our value. We're picking up vibes all the time going, oh, that person doesn't really like me because they made a bad face. Or we all the time, we're doing that. What I'm saying is doing a conscious exercise to reinforce your value to yourself mentally, because then your mental body will start to be able to focus, like you said, Sylvia, earlier. Then your mental body will be able to start focusing on what is good about you because you're starting to bring conscious awareness to it. So thanks for that question, Sylvia, about how is value a heart or a mental body thing? It's both, but the heart, I'll just reiterate, the heart will never put you down. Your value is unlimited and incredible from the heart. The heart will always give you such joy and a sense of your value beyond this physical body. And that's why when we're loving the physical body, we need to start working with the mind and start giving it evidence to show you the beauty that you do bring to people, the love and the value you bring to people. So it's, I am going to wrap up there. Melissa, hi, I can see you there. So, hi Melissa, I miss you. So Melissa is a big heart person as well. When we used to hug, I could feel her heart energy. And I think one of the things to bring our value also to with our hearts is something that I'm working on now through transformed relationships. Often relationships are based on our perceptions, either of ourselves. Maybe if you get upset with your partner, if they said something that upset you, you have a perception that they're a bad person. And we spend a lot of energy on that. One of the things that keeps relationships together and allows them to grow is understanding that a lot of us live in those perceptions, but we're not those perceptions. We've been nurtured, and our nature is to live in those perceptions, but that's not all that we are. We're actually these hearts. So like when I hug Melissa, I feel her heart, and it's just this strong, powerful energy. And when you're in an intimate relationship, that's there too. That's what you're attracted to in the person. It's just that sometimes you'll have a lot of perceptions of what the person should be, what they're not doing, and that's where we start to get stuck. We start to think that the person may not really be what we want them to be, which is what we feel in our hearts. So in the beginning of the video, if you're just joining, I shared a lot about the perceptions that we grow up in, that we're nurtured in. Our nature is in our nervous system. So you can see how that can also be a way to look at how we use those filters of the nervous system, often to cover what our hearts are. But your hearts are always operating anyway. So sometimes it's more important just to connect to heart and listen to that, or give it space in your life so it can feel where it wants to grow and where it wants to expand. So I'm going to wrap up there. I don't have any more comments coming through. And if people have, because the perception of self one is one that I'm going to keep working through, but if people have other topics about body image, intimacy, self-love, I'm more than open to that. But I usually run the topics based on what I get in the chat, if there's more comments. And you can find out more about the body of love in the link that I have there, which has 10 steps to love your body based on going beyond those perceptions. And there's 33 exercises in the book to try as well. So thanks for joining. And Transformed Relationships is all about a powerful transformation of what love can be. I think Melissa's just saying when you have a strong heart energy. I'm not sure. One more thing. How can you protect your heart? Oh, now I see. How can you protect your heart when you have a strong heart energy? So a lot of people who have strong hearts, and it's interesting because I think I've mentioned this with Melissa before, when you are a strong heart energy, you might lead your life from your heart. You might not you might not put so much value or importance on the perceptions of others. So if others behave badly, you might forgive them more easily until at some point you've had enough. And like Melissa's saying, you might feel like your heart's picking up too much. So I use a lot of protection tools. I think, Melissa, I've shared some with you. I'm not going to share them right now, but if people want to know more about that, put that in the chat. But definitely looking at protecting your aura. If you're someone that's always feeling people's emotions through your hearts first, and every time that you start your day, you really need to focus on, firstly in your heart, start your day by focusing on what are the things that you would like to experience more of. With Sylvia earlier, we were talking about focusing on what's good about you. So you could spend just one day, start your day and say to yourself, okay, I want to know and see today what's good about me. I really need to see it clearly, and I want to see it in a way that I have great joy and fun with it, or whatever language. Maybe you don't want to have fun. Maybe you want to do it a different way. I like to have fun. Or in Melissa's case, you could say, okay, I want to learn how to enjoy my heart and its strong energy and protect it today. And you can do a protection around your aura if that's something that you connect to. Or you can actually just say the words, I want to be protected today, but experience the fullness of my heart. Then the work is, and this is work, if you're not writing down and watching what happens during your day, you won't get the lesson. The universe will come back the next day or the next to try and show it to you. But if you're not aware and writing things down, or at the end of your day, looking back at your day and going, this was interesting. I wonder how that could be for me. If you're not taking the time to write that down, then you're not going to get the learning. So once you've set that intent at the beginning of the day to protect your heart, then at the end of your day, the next step is to say, what happened during my day? And write down what happened and see if you get the lesson. If you didn't get the lesson about how to protect your heart while you're enjoying the fullness of that, then you may need to try it again, because spirit doesn't work, or your consciousness doesn't work by instant gratification and getting it right the first time. You will have to sometimes take a few days, and often 7 days, a week is a good series of time to actually try a new technique of working with your heart, or working with a specific intent. Like in Sylvia's case, I want to focus on what's good about me. Doing that for 7 days can be a really strong exercise to get you to start really practicing something. And that's where intent, I've discovered, is much more effective. If we just do it once and expect to get answers, we're not really taking the time to love. We're expecting instant gratification, and that's not how love grows. Love is about nurturance. I said that at the beginning of the video as well. We learn through nurturing every day as we're children in a tribe. We get nurtured every day. So your love with yourself, your heart, needs that relationship every day. Thanks for that question, Melissa, because that kind of brought up the end of focusing on your heart. And because you have a strong heart energy, you may need to actually spend a lot more focus on how do I enjoy the fullness of it while protecting my heart at the same time. So I'm going to leave it there. And thanks for joining Tea and Transformed Relationships. And please, any comments in the chat, I try to see the comments. And I think next week I might explore more about heart and how to expand into that. Thanks everyone, and bye.